Here we are, the inimitable stage, Red Zone Zamasu. Now, this new Red Zone stage is probably, arguably, the hardest stage, and it's also demarking the new age of difficult events that are coming into Dokkan, where the new fad, the new meme is basically having something where even if your character is very tanky, even though your character builds defense, what happens when the enemy's normal attacks are doing as much as super attacks, and they attack you before you get to do anything? Now, I've seen some people, such as the Truth DT, already talk about this a little bit, where he was kind of miserable in saying that they basically made characters like LR Cooler completely irrelevant within a short amount of time. Also, at the same time, I think that a lot of people are just kind of sick of these very grindy, hard events. And in my opinion, I think that this Red Zone event, as well as some Red Zone events that came before it, are just plain not fun. Like, in my opinion, I think that content that is harder isn't necessarily something that is better. I mean, you saw with the ridiculousness that was Cell Max, where he came in, and it was kind of a meme. It was kind of fun to see for the first time something so ridiculously hard and so out of this world. But after a while, it starts to get old, and it starts to become this weird grind fest where it's like, okay, in order to take on an event, I need X amount of characters that can either dodge, or these characters can tank, and it only ends up becoming a very specific set of characters that become relevant for these newer stages, which in some part isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in another part is extremely boring. And I think the big problem is that Dokkan in the past kind of made a shift away from tactics and just towards pure difficulty. What I mean by that is, in the past, you would have ridiculous events. Like, the OG Dokkan events were disgusting. OG SDR Broly was super annoying. The OG Cell event was super annoying. Even Majin Buu was not a trivial event. And you were able to get around it if you didn't have the best characters by using stun characters, seal characters. These certain characters that you're able to basically mitigate damage or stop damage, and you can also lower attack as well. That can help you in the battle. But eventually Dokkan started to move away from that, especially in these more premium, harder events where you basically can't lower attack, you can't seal, you can't stun, and you know, you can say that, oh, the game just got harder, it's taking away these things that are unfair. But what happens when you get to the point where the game's like, oh wow, we have this brand new super hard event, and by the way, you can't use active skills. You're not allowed to use active skills. When you do, you know, they'll start off by saying, okay, you can use the active skill, and the skip attack doesn't work. Oh boy, it's really hard. Or they say, you know what, it does 0 damage. Oh boy, you get your effect, but it does 0 damage. Like, it literally makes the game not fun. Like, I think one of the few modes in the game that has continually stayed fun, I mean, Super Battle Road and Extreme Super Battle Road are pretty fun and they're pretty good, but even they get a little bit too grindy. Not crazy, not yet, but they do get a little bit too grindy. In my opinion, I think the best game mode I've played and enjoyed would have to be Battlefield, Dokkan Battlefield. And Dokkan Battlefield isn't necessarily the hardest, and even stages that are ridiculous where characters hit you super hard, you can super attack seal them. You can lower attack on some of the stages. You can stun on some of the stages. And I feel like Bandai is being unreasonable when they take away things like sealing super attack, or even things like stunning. Like, do you really think that people are going to go in the brand new Red Zone event, risk a General Blue? By the way, you only have 5 attempts to play the event per day. Risk a General Blue, try to get a stun, and then even if you did get back-to-back stuns, like, why is that a bad thing? Like, why is it so terrible if you were to stun the character and just go through with that method? Like, that's the way you can play the game. You can make the argument and say then everyone would do that, but the simple point of that would be is that, okay, when your character does stun, you do less damage to the stunned enemy. And you could say that you get punished because you're doing less damage, because back in the day, that's what most people did. You would do a stun, you'd do less damage, and, well, it's not necessarily you would do less damage, but it's just the point that you didn't have the best characters, so you'd use someone like General Blue to get a stun off, and that's how you would go through the event, and that's how you would get it. Now, stuns are not that reliable. You're not always guaranteed a stun. Seals are reliable. You will get them every time. But in an event like Zamasu, where super attacks are doing 500,000 when blocking, over 1 million if you don't have a million zillion defense and damage reduction, like, I understand the point, like, oh, you could just use a whis, you can use double whis, you can use triple whis. But at the same time, I feel like Dokkan has gotten to the point where it's just making events harder. Like, what if it gets so hard to the point where you just need to get that perfect run? I mean, there's been times where I just didn't play events. Like, when the OG God events dropped with Beerus and Danganronpa and whatever the other gods, I just didn't play it because I was like, this is stupid. Turn 1, you need to have all these perfect things in alignment. It's not fun. I'm not playing it. So I think with Red Zone getting increasingly more difficult, it becomes increasingly more annoying. And I think one thing to take into consideration is that as that event starts to get harder, more and more characters become irrelevant. Like, for the longest time, I did not use Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, and I did not use Super Saiyan Blue Vegito. They are now just getting back in rotation because their EZA was so overwhelming that it made them usable. And they were irrelevant. You could not use them anything. And they were 5th year anniversary units, and within a year and a half or a year, they were completely irrelevant. So the way that the game is going and at the pace it's going, there's going to be characters that are just irrelevant. They don't do anything, and it's just annoying. And at that point, I'll be honest with you, I've said this multiple times, I'll say it again. Dragon Ball Z is the only reason I play this game. I don't like popping bubbles. I don't like this tactical analysis of figuring out who blocks the best, who dodges I don't care. Your game is mid. I like the Dragon Ball Z characters. I don't sit here popping bubbles just because of the fact that I enjoy popping bubbles. You need to understand that you need to keep the game as a mobile game, because I'll tell you right now, the older I get and the more I play this game, I'm not at home. I'm not sitting there with a gallon of Gatorade. I'm not sitting there with the lube out, ready to grind, ready to squeeze myself through these hard events. Yeah, I play them. Yeah, they're enjoyable. But you get to the point where, you know, there's been times where I'm playing the game and I'm trying to go to the bathroom and it's like I can't get off the ball because this Zamasu sweat me so hard. If I leave now, I'm going to die. End up my leg fall asleep. You know what I mean? That type of energy, that type of sweat, it just doesn't feel fun. It's just so ridiculously annoying. And I feel like a lot of people are getting that, where they're getting that fatigue. And I think a while ago, Bandai said, you know, Somax is going to be the hardest event for a while. You know, just don't worry. It's going to be super tough. And since then, Red Zone has increasingly gotten harder, and it's gotten increasingly more annoying. And I think that they've gone down the wrong route, where they're just making events harder as opposed to adding more gimmicks. Like, why can't you add more gimmicks where it's like, oh, you need someone to get stuns off? Okay, it's BS that someone is going to basically try to use... By the way, stuns are not that OP. Stuns used to be OP because you used to be able to quit the app, come in, and try it 3 different times. That's OP. In what universe are stuns now guaranteed to go back to back, back to back? Sometimes it happens, but it's not guaranteed. And even if it happens, like, it's fun. Like, stunning is fun. Sealing is fun. Like, that's the thing. It's part of the game and it's actually fun. Why do you even bother making characters that can lower super attack? Oh my god. What event can you lower super attack? None of them, bro. None of them. Like, there's no point. You're adding features to units where if a unit does not raise defense on super, irrelevant. If a unit does not have damage reduction, irrelevant. Why are you doing that where you need to now it's not like every character's always had damage reduction, and it's not like they add that. Usually they don't put that in the kit. And I think it's just going down the wrong route. It's making it less fun. Like, I did the Zamasu event, I did the missions, wow, oh my god, I beat it. But at the same time, like, I didn't feel the same way when I was fighting Broly back in the day, because I felt like that fight was a lot more easier. Once you were able to prepare, you get the right units, you have the right setup, and it's something that's time consuming, it's something that's annoying, but it has a nice level of difficulty to pay out, where you're not sitting there literally trying to get the perfect formation. Because there's some sickos out there that try to no-item the Zamasu event. Good luck, it's possible, but good luck. It's like, oh my god, if I take this much damage, and then next turn I mitigate, and the next turn I dodge, and then I get the heal from Piccolo, it's like, come on, bro. Like, at what point are you basically playing a probability and statistics simulator? Like, you're trying to get the 0.001% chance of a perfect run? Fair enough, it's interesting, and even in Super Battle Road, I've done no-item runs. Like, I've done autistic runs, but it's just not... It's not something you should force people to do just to play the event. And again, you can use whis. It is something that, at this point, it's not like Zamasu is an impossible event. If you really want to, you could add, you know, the whis, pop a whis, you know, play it very carefully, get a dodge. You know, it's not insane, but it is getting to the point where it's feeling like that. And I think that if Dokkan continues down this route, where you have players like the Truth DT, literally the goddamn Moby Dick whale of this game, saying that you're making units like LR Cooler irrelevant, and what's the point of using them? Because, you know, once you play the game and you do everything in the game, literally, what is the point? I mean, yeah, I play the game for fun, and there's certain stages I'll play for fun if I'm, you know, basically looking to waste some time and I'm out. But like I said, I'm finding myself less and less being home, dying to play the game. And by the way, a lot of that has to do with Dokkan still keeping the stamina system. Like, in no universe am I sitting there playing Dokkan and I say, oh, I better spend a Dragon Stone if I want to keep playing. I put down Dokkan, you're irrelevant, you don't want to give it, it's been 8 years, you realize you're not getting a lot of stones from the stamina, but they kept that stupid stamina system in there, and people defend it with the meat. Oh my god, you can use the meat. There's been times where I've been playing Dokkan, having a fun time, and I ran out of meat, or I just ran out of, you know, basically the will to spend a Dragon Stone, and I'm like, alright, putting down Dokkan, it is what it is, I'm not going to continue to do that. It basically punishes you for playing the game longer, and the reason why I mention that is because that's very rare. I don't do that often, so I can only imagine people that play the game, you know, just having it as an extra expense. But that's a small detail, and that's something that's just a point to say that I think Bandai has been a little bit out of touch when it comes to the game in terms of just leaving it as it is. Like, I know Red Zone doesn't require stamina, but other events and other stages do, and it's more of a complaint than anything else. But at the end of the day, I think that Red Zone is becoming overly difficult. I think that, you know, just making an event harder isn't fun. I don't think just making an event harder and the characters that are newer, better, good game design. I think that Dokkan definitely is starting to go down this weird route where it's just very simplistic. Instead of adding events where you need to use certain characters or use certain combinations or have certain link skills, I think they're just saying, okay, you need to have it be harder, as opposed to having it any type of way where you can use tactics. And I think it started a long time ago when they disallowed ceiling super attacks and lowering attacks, as well as stunning for most events that are, you know, of the Red Zone harder difficulty. And I think that's something that needs to stop, and it's something that should go away. And at the very least, Bandai should understand that you can't just make events harder and expect players to think it's fun. In my opinion, I think it's just lazy game design.